Hi everyone, this is Nick Pollock here from Roar Lions Roar. While you're here, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that alert bell so you never miss any of our new content. And if you prefer to listen instead of watch, make sure you check us out on your podcast platform of choice where you can subscribe and download each new episode. Thanks for watching and thanks for listening. Go State!
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Roar Lions Roar. I'm your host tonight, Matt Filipovitz, and I am joined by a special guest back from his long sabbatical, Mr. Nick Pollock. Nick, welcome back. How are you?
I am doing great. It has been quite a while indeed. I don't think I've done a pod since before the Rose Bowl.
We've been busy prepping to shag fly balls for the home run derby for the past 9 months.
That is very true.
So you've been very preoccupied working on tracking down line drives.
Yeah.
But yeah, Nick, welcome back. This is a pretty obvious sign that the season is right around the corner. We're under like 40 days at time of recording, and this is kind of our last off-season centered show. We have our show list prepped out for our preview podcast coming up in the month of August. So, Nick, you and I are kind of just going to hop on. We have a very, very, very rough outline that we came up with, Nick, what do you think, 17 seconds ago?
Yeah, about that.
So we kind of know what we want to hit on, but we're just going to see where the day takes us. How's that sound, Nick?
That sounds great to me. I'm ready.
Perfect. So I guess to start things off, we kind of have to address Big Ten Media Days. It's always a pretty not fun event. You know, you never really gain that much as a fan from like what you can learn about a team from Media Day. I think it's more or less just a great way for like the national media to get exposure to your team. Nick, so it seemed like the biggest takeaway from Media Day was what wasn't said by James Franklin, in that a starting quarterback wasn't named. Nick, personally, I don't care about this. Like, I don't think there has to be a starter named really anytime soon. Do you care about it? Like, do you think anybody should really read anything into the fact that it is currently, July 27th and we don't know Penn State's starting quarterback?
Yeah, no, I mean, not in the slightest. Also, I think that the main thing that happens at Media Day is they just get all the coaches in the same place so they can create those sometimes awesome and sometimes terrible Big Ten commercials where all the coaches, say their different things and whatnot, like the one where James Franklin's like picking out the white suit from like a closet line of white suits. Those kind of commercials.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good call.
But as far as Drew Aller and Bo Prabula are concerned, no, could not care less that Franklin didn't name a starter. He gains nothing from doing that in that setting. Like it's not a secret that I'm sure Drew Aller is going to be the starting quarterback. But I also think, from what we've heard, Bo Prabula has been impressive as expected. Like nobody thought that Prabula was going to come in and be like a surefire career backup. Like I think it was always expected that he'd at least put up a fight. Like he's a talented kid.
Yeah, the kid can play.
Yeah, and like in another timeline, where he's prepping to be the starter right now. But you don't gain anything out of saying in mid-July that this kid's a starter and this kid isn't. Even if they know, it serves no purpose for really anybody other than somebody who needs to create content, basically. And arguably you could create more content over the fact that he didn't answer. So
yes,
no, I really don't care at all about the fact that he declined to name a starter.
Yeah, I've seen like takes on Twitter of it being like this is a sign that Aller's not that good, or there's not enough competition, and I'm like, that's just irrelevant. Like I don't think this is a big deal at all. We'll find out when the starter is when we find out. Like Penn State doesn't even release a depth chart anymore, and they haven't. I think since like 2020. Like I think COVID was the last time they stopped releasing a depth chart because they just didn't know who was going to be available, and I don't think they've done it since then. So it's not like there's that much value to it. I'm fine waiting. The season's only going to get closer, so was I think at least, Nick. The really
Isn't it crazy how close the season is? So I know I'm very. By the way, just for anyone curious, the reason I've been gone for the last however many months is because in the spring I coach high school baseball. My team did quite well this year. We finished third in the state. Excellent team. Was a lot of fun.
Nice.
Go
Bears!
But
in honor of the Chicago Bears are named after, I'm sure. Third place in the NFC North. Just kidding, they were in last place, but that's my goal for this year.
But so I've been doing that, and then I also, I coach, I give lessons, I do stuff all year round, so I've been pretty busy with that and whatnot. But boy, where's it going? Oh yeah, so for me, time's flown by for a myriad of other reasons, but it was kind of. I just woke up this morning, I was like, Jesus, like we're what, barely over a month away from football, which is crazy.
Camp opens in less than a week. Camp opens, I believe, this coming Wednesday. I think that's going to be August 2nd. Like,
It's
it's
wild.
absolutely insane how close the season is. And we'll give our preview schedule at the end of the pod just because we're still mapping it out, but I think we've got everything pinned down pretty well. So there's going to be a good flood of content coming to you guys from here on out. But Nick, anything else from Media Day really stand out to you? Like any other questions? I mean, as somebody who's been a bit busier than I this winter and spring with baseball, like any other questions that you really still have about the Penn State team that you were hoping to at least like hear some kind of answer on, like specialists in there? Like again, I really don't think there's Media Day isn't a place to answer questions. It's a place to plug your program.
Right.
And I think you view it the same way. But anything, if you would have had a question anywhere you would have gone with anything at Media Day?
I mean, I guess when it comes to the team, not the only real question, but one of the questions I have that maybe I would have asked would be, kind of, and it's kind of an unfair question because who really knows, because they weren't practicing at the time anyway, but like, just what is like the state of the right tackle position? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what do they like what they've seen from Caden Wallace? I know we got some really positive reports from him in the spring, or do they expect to see more Drew Shelton over there? So maybe something like that. And then I think a couple questions I would have maybe asked about like the coaching staff, I think is actually more interesting at this point. Like I would have asked something about the process that led to Dion Barnes getting the defensive line job. Like um maybe like asking James Franklin, like, when you started this process, like, did you like, was he high on the list? Because I know at the time we were like, I mean, this is kind of early for him to get a job like this right away, but it all just kind of seemed to fall in. I know there was like the pipe dream of somehow getting his name was Elijah Robinson
Eli,
from
yeah.
Texas A&M. So I guess I would have been kind of curious about that, and then I think the other thing would be just what is Franklin's overall comfort level, knowing that this is going to be the first time in his tenure at Penn State that he'll have the same offensive coordinator for a third season in a row. I think that
Isn't
would
it
have been an
crazy? Mike
interesting.
Yursich is the longest tenured
Yeah.
offensive coordinator. Is it since Galen Hall?
I mean, it must be, right?
Because OB called him for 2 years. Then it was
Obi
two
called it
years
for
of
2 years.
yeah, 2 years of Donovan, 2 years of
Uh-huh.
Moorhead, 2 years of Ronnie, Shiraka, and year three of Yursich. Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And it's I think it's also the first time that, well, all right, hold on. Let's reverse engineer this, I think. Is this the first time that it's been a returning offensive coordinator with a new quarterback too? Because like when
Oh,
Shiraka came in, that was Sean Clifford. So, well, that was new. So
Clifford
Straka wasn't returning, so he doesn't count in this at all.
Clifford Ronnie in 19. Yeah, Clifford Ronnie in
Um,
19.
but Clifford, yeah. Well,
Mm-hmm.
wait. Oh yeah, you're right.
Yep.
Okay, so
Yep.
my theory's bunked already, but um, regardless, I know we'll talk about this more, but I'm really excited for the possibilities of what can be with not just any third year coordinator. We really like what Mike Yursich has done for the most part. So having him combined with a guy that he recruited, he worked really hard to get to Penn State. He's had a chance to work with him off the field a bunch now, finally step in the role. We'll talk about it more when we get to the quarterbacks, but obviously really excited about that. And I would have been interested to hear Franklin just kind of riff on that for a few minutes personally.
Yeah, on the staff point, I would have liked to have heard. I really want to ask, who on the staff do you expect to be a head coach in the next 5 years? Like, I think Manny Diaz is probably going to be that. I think
Yeah.
Poindexter could be that. I think
Yeah.
Terry could be that. Dion probably not. I don't think Troutwine can be that in 5 years. I don't know if Yursich wants it. Like, I'm just curious to see, who on the staff currently should I be looking out for as the next guy? Because as the Franklin tree continues to grow, it's just interesting to watch all the different phases that all these prior assistants who are now head coaches, like Moorhead, pretty much bottomed out at Akron, and Pry did the same
Mhm.
thing at Virginia Tech, and now they're on the way back up. Ronnie at Old Dominion is still trying to build that program up. Charles Huff won a bowl game in Marshall's first year in the Sun Belt. Like,
Yeah.
Franklin has these guys in his coaching tree now who are starting to build programs in their images, and I'm just curious to see who's next in that list. So, I'm tired of hearing about NIL. Like, I'm tired of hearing about like the transfer portal. Like, I don't care about any of that anymore. Like, we're under 40 days away from playing football. Like, I just want to know who on the field is a mind that can lead a program one day, and what does that mean they're going to do for Penn State in 2023? Probably would have been my primary question.
Philosophical coaching tree question for you.
Yeah, hit me.
Let's say Manny Diaz and Mike Yursich are both head coaches elsewhere within the next 3 years. Do you count them as part of the James Franklin coaching tree?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think
Because
Yursich.
I would,
I think Yursich
I
you
would
have
not
to.
count Diaz.
I don't think that Diaz maybe not. Diaz probably not because he already kind of climbed the ladder.
Yeah.
And now this is kind of like his rehab stint.
Mm-hmm.
Yursich, I think you have to.
Yursich is an interesting one because, I mean, because I'm sure Gundy would claim him as part of his coaching tree,
I
right?
don't think Gundy knows who half of his assistants are anyway. Like, I'll be honest. I'd be stunned
Well,
if that dude could name everybody in that building.
but theoretically,
Yeah. Yeah.
he would and
Yeah.
probably and could like I obviously
Could
Yursich
Ryan
was
Day?
not.
Could Ryan Day claim him?
I was gonna say, was he under Day or was he under Urban?
2019 would have
2020.
been there. 2020 he was in Texas because he got fired, and that's how he ended up here. So
Yeah, yeah.
2019, which would have been Day's first year.
Oh boy,
Great podcasting.
that's pre-COVID. That's like 20 years ago.
You're right, mid-season form. Yeah.
But regardless, I no like whether it was Day or Urban. No, obviously not.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. It's an interesting one that just popped in my head as you mentioned coaching tree. I was like if Trout, I like. I would feel more sure if they had been guys that had been like position coaches and then elevated to
Mm-hmm.
coordinator and then gone on. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, like I said, Diaz absolutely not, because I think if you're a head coach somewhere else, I don't think you then become part, because theoretically he's already part of a tree, whoever that would be.
Right.
So I don't think he would be, but I guess Yursich would be. I don't know.
Yeah. I wonder if Yursich. I think Yursich likes calling plays too much. I don't know if he'd want to run his own program like that. I don't know. I don't know enough about the guy.
I could see it.
I would want to ask that. I guess I would want to ask. Who on just who on your staff do you think has those I mean, we're kind of led to believe everybody wants to be that head coach, but there's like a ton of really good coaches in the sport who just like coaching ball. Bud Foster, I think, is a great example of that. That's a guy who didn't want to deal with all the head coach stuff. He just wanted to coach ball. Like, I wonder if there's that on the roster anywhere. I'd just be curious what that looked like, or on the coaching.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody, like the Poindexter one is an interesting one to me, because
Dex is going to be a head coach,
or not UNC. Like UVA was obviously that's the job.
Mm-hmm.
And now that it's kind of off, I mean, theoretically, if it comes back around again, I would expect him to have a pretty lengthy, significant interview process.
Well, he's the Diaz replacement, right? As the true DC. I mean, he technically has the co-DC title, but once Diaz leaves, whether that's after this year or next year, Dex is going to be a very attractive option.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it also depends, like whether or not Terry Smith wants it.
Yeah,
like
that's
because if he wants it, you can't say no to him. Like he's got the tenure, he's got the background, he's produced and he's completely remade what was a position that would consistently make me sad every year into maybe the deepest group on the roster. Like, it's hard to argue with that too.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I'd be curious what the thoughts process for Franklin is on that front. But Nick, we won't spend too much time talking about this. We have a bit of a game we're going to play in a little bit, but first things first, I want to make sure we thank our podcast sponsor, and that's our friends over at Home Field Apparel. Their new Penn State collection dropped a couple weeks back, and I got my order in the mail. I had this awesome, for our YouTube viewers, this Nittany Lion cursive script logo, which has quickly become one of my favorites. It fits me really well. I also got a pair of the joggers that came out with the new collection, and it was like 94 degrees here, I think, yesterday. And I worked from home, and I wore them all day because they were that comfortable. I was really excited about it. And on top of these phenomenal items, they also have a couple of crew necks, sweatshirts. They had an initial 15-piece Penn State collection that launched last year. And for our listeners, you can get 15% off your first order with promo code ROARLIONSROAR. That's all caps, all one word at checkout. If for whatever reason you are found this podcast and you also are a UConn fan or a Slippery Rock fan, they also have those schools. They have a ton of other schools, and they're always adding more. So again, our listeners get 15% off their first order with promo code ROARLIONSROAR at checkout. Thank you to Home Field. And Nick, shall we play a little bit of a game?
I would love to.
So you came up with this.
Sure.
So I will pass the reins to you.
Yes. So, as you may have picked up through the first 15 minutes of this podcast, I really like baseball. Really big thing for me. So in the spirit
Do you like
of
the Seattle Mariners still?
Oh, I love to hate and I hate to love the Seattle Mariners. They are the truest form of entertainment and sports that exists. The least successful franchise probably in all of American sports. And yet they have produced some of the truly most iconic players in the sport at the same time. It's their there's so many words to describe the Seattle Mariners that don't need to be said right here, though. But in the spirit of the Major League Baseball trade deadline approaching, as we are talking now in 4 days, I believe, I thought it would be fun if we came up with some honest trade proposals within the Big Ten football landscape. So the rules for this were that Matt and I could not simply just say, hey, I want Marvin Harrison on my team on Penn State this year. It doesn't work like that. You have to actually create a legitimate, what you believe to be fair proposal. So I don't know for you, I don't know how deep you went into it, but I know when I was making my proposal, I was thinking about, okay, what does this other team actually need and have, et cetera. And
yes.
so I really tried to make it fair.
Can I trade Old Coley was my first question I wanted to ask.
You can do whatever you want.
Okay, that's a kicker then. Good to know. That's like the cash considerations is Old Coley.
Would you like to share your proposal first? Your first proposal?
Yeah. So right off the bat, I'm thinking, what is the biggest... I don't want flashy here. Like, I think Penn State's pretty set at the flashy positions. I like the quarterback. I like the running back. Nick, you know where they're really lacking? The Penn State team as a whole?
Wide receivers?
No, not even wide receivers. There's one thing that we really need, and that's a punter. Penn State needs a punter desperately. I think that's the number one need at the trade deadline. Like a good bullpen needs a setup man. So sure. I'm going to offer the Iowa Hawkeyes, hated rival, injury faking, claiming organization. I'm going to offer them 2 wide receivers on our roster that are at least composite 4 stars. So any receiver on the roster for composite 4 stars, they can have 2 of them. In return, we get Torrey Taylor, the All-American punter from the Iowa Hawkeyes. Mm-hmm. That is my offer. I think we're selling high a little bit, but I think we can get Iowa to bite because I think Iowa believes that their offense is going to have a little bit of giddy up to it for the first time. I don't think that's going to happen. I just don't think Brian Ferentz has that in him based on the decade of data I have to go off of. So I feel confident that this will not come back to bite us in the butt later because I don't think Iowa is going to try to throw the football no matter how talented their receivers may be. And I know Penn State is going to need a punter to flip the field a couple of times a game. So that's my offer.
I like the structure of the deal. I like your thinking. I'm not sure Iowa accepts that deal.
Wow.
I
Iowa values punting more than most people value anything, so I guess that's a good point.
Right, and like even though I'm sure they have grand aspirations of being a better offensive team this year, but it's not like Kirk Ferentz. I'm sure Kirk Ferentz at least understands that. Hey, when I feel like it, I got to be able to run 3 plays that I know are going to gain a total of 4 yards just because I want to pin a team deep.
Listen,
I
everybody needs their security blanket. I get it.
Yeah, I'm not sure they hit accept on that trade.
So then what gets me over the hump there? What I'm already giving you, not even like the 3-star guys. Like we get to think about this. We get to keep Dante Cephas. We get to keep Amari Evans. Like there's talent in that receiver room that gets to stay. It's not part of this deal. What's the kicker?
you know how you
What do I
get them?
throw in?
You know how you get them?
How?
I don't think you even worry about the receivers. I
Okay.
think you got to give him Katron.
Give him what?
I think you got to give him Katron.
You think? Oh, I don't think I can do that.
I agree, but
I
I think that's the cost.
What if I counter? And
Okay.
instead of Katron, I give What if I give analyst Danny O'Brien a new mind in the room for the offense? He can coach on the field now to help Brian out. What if I offer an offensive analyst who's worked with Franklin at Maryland in pass-happy offenses, who's been a quarterback, who famously throw the ball for Iowa fans out there? What if I threw in that on top of the two blue chip wide receivers?
If you give the 2 blue chip wide receivers, and let's
They can pick
put
any
some
two.
names. Let's put some names on them for the sake of the argument. So let's say it's let's say, boy, I feel like I need to pull up like the depth chart to like really have a sense of who that would be.
I mean,
All right,
there's
let's see
the
here.
4-star guys on the roster are probably like, oh, would Malik McClain, the big transfer, he's built like a tight end, that could be appealing for Iowa.
McClain could be actually, okay. You know what?
Okay, hit me.
I have a counter proposal for you that I think gets you over the hump.
Okay.
So let's keep Danny O'Brien there because I really like this idea of pooling off the field assets too. Let's go Danny O'Brien
because I want to make sure I have that in the back pocket if I need it.
Let's go Danny O'Brien.
Okay. This is incredibly niche content.
And I like the idea of Malik McClain.
Okay.
Throw Malik McClain in there. And then if you give him Tyler Warren, I think you got a deal.
I'm not giving anybody who listens to our draft podcast knows I'm not giving Tyler Warren. Absolutely not. Not doing it.
I think you can get away with it also with if you go Dinkins. I don't think Cross gets it done.
Iowa doesn't need tight ends though. They never do.
But they're going to use them.
I guess.
I think if you go Dinkins or Schlafer, you can get it done.
Okay. I'll do that. I do that.
I think that's a deal.
Okay. All right. Seems fair. And Penn State
you might even get a kick it. You might even get a kick in from the Iowa side at that point. Like you could probably get them to like give you like a replacement, like some wide receiver that they won't know how to use that'll end up putting up like 800 yards in the season somehow. Yeah, like something like that.
Shout out to Chuck Sizzle.
I like that.
It solves the
really
punting
like
problem.
That you started there.
I'm really worried about specialists. Like straight up, I am like that. That's gonna be the thing I'm so happy that Penn State is starting on at home in a night game. Like I don't think the lights get much brighter than that, and I'm glad it's in like a home environment at least. Like I'm glad that they can rip that Band-Aid off.
You don't have faith in what's his name, Riley Thompson? You don't have faith?
I do have a lot of faith in Riley Thompson. Like he was a freshman All-American last year, but the rugby style of kicking isn't something we've seen in quite a long time. Like it just feels like a lot could go wrong. And I think back, oh my God, Nick, what Ohio State game was it where was it Ohio State, Penn State 2013? Like terrible blowout where it was just a blowout because the Ohio State punter just kept on pinning them inside like the 15. They couldn't get anything going. And I think the Penn State punter at the time was it Chris Gula was the punter at the time for Penn State? Like it was
the game was like 51-17. Was that the absurd
run?
The absurd A-Rob run? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I just think back to that. Like I will never that was like such like a transformative moment in my Penn State fandom where I'm like, oh my God, punters are everything. And then we've been so spoiled with Blake Gillikin, Jordan Stout, and then Barney last year was great. Like I'm just
Yeah.
the reroll of the dice makes me nervous.
I mean, that's fair. I love the idea. I love the concept because I think if you can pair a All-American type punter with this defense, that could be pretty nasty. So
Yeah.
I love the concept. I love
Okay.
that we started there
Okay. Love it.
because I did
Umpteen is
not
winning.
go. I went much more mainstream with
You're a
my
coward.
picks. I tried to make some blockbusters.
You're out of practice, Nick. You're out of practice.
Listen, if the Angels aren't going to trade Ohtani, we need blockbusters somewhere. I gotta fuel that fire.
Okay.
Okay, so here's my initial proposal. And actually, I went even deep. I took in like class into a factor here too.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So give me. I don't think I actually know how to say his name correctly. Jerzon Newton.
I knew you were gonna say this guy.
Yeah.
I was gonna bet
Give
the
me
house you were gonna
Jerzon
say
Newton,
this guy.
Illinois defensive tackle,
Mhm.
and I will give to Illinois Theo Johnson, and I will give them Zane Durant. I think this is a fair deal because Newton's a one and done for Penn State. He's gone after this year. Arguably the best defensive tackle in the country, but it is a 1 year thing. Theo Johnson probably also gone after this year. So that's why I felt like I had to put in Zane as well, because Zane's going to have at least 2 years. At Illinois, probably more like 3, because he's probably not going to flash as much as far as the NFL is concerned in that environment. So I think you get obviously a weapon you can use right now, Theo Johnson. And I'm just going to, for sake of argument, I'm going to say Theo Johnson's fully healthy. You get a dude you can use right now at a position that's probably more helpful for Illinois to have a big name at than receiver, just because of the way they run their offense.
Right.
And then you get
Williams, though, good player. That converted quarterback
yes.
he's a good ball player.
And then you get Zane Durant, who, he's not Newton.
That's
but
your boy.
I do love Zane. That says a lot about that I'm willing to give him up here. But obviously, kid with a high ceiling, probably at least a decent floor as soon as this year, as far as production is concerned. And he's going to be surrounded. Illinois got a great defense, so he's surrounded by other players that will elevate his game. I think this is pretty fair. What are your thoughts?
I don't want to go against Theo in week 3. Luke Altmaier is a good player, but he's going to need a security blanket as a first-time transfer. And I don't think there's going to be very many. How do I word this sentence I'm about to say? There aren't very many players more reliable than Theo Johnson, I think, in the Big Ten. Like, I think he is going to be a very big security blanket for Penn State's first-time starter. Drew Aller or Bo Prabula, who's to say? And that's why I don't think that. I think from a Penn State perspective, like, I get that it's going to be very beneficial, but I think Penn State can cover up a lot of sins on defense with the talent surrounding the guys at defensive tackle. But I think giving up that kind of security blanket with how big of a question mark receivers still are for the Penn State offense, I don't want to give up Theo Johnson, maybe the most known commodity as a pass catcher for this Penn State offense.
That's fair. So you're saying no from the Penn State side.
I'm saying no from the Penn State side. I think Newton has a lot of value there. And I think Newton may be like an untouchable player. I think the best player
he might be
on an Illinois team that won 8 games for like the first time in 25 years may make it untouchable. So I think you have to blow them away. And I think you can make this deal. I think you can take Theo out. I wonder if you did Bo Prabula, Trey Potts.
That was my first thought. My first
Zane
thought
Durant.
was Bo. Yeah.
Bo, Trey Potts, and Zane for Newton.
I feel like Potts is it's like a player to be named later in this case. I don't think he adds all that much value.
Look what they did with Chase Bryce, though. What was his name? Is it Chase Bryce? Chase Brown? They're running back. Chase Brown. He was a transfer in from Western Michigan, and he ran like crazy. He was excellent. For them. Yeah, they've done some good stuff with transfer running backs. So that's where this comes into play. But is that enough?
I would think Potts wouldn't be enough. I think it'd have to be Katron in that deal.
Okay. Are you doing that? I'm not doing that.
So it was Bo, Katron, and what was the last piece?
And Zane.
Mm, I don't think so. That's too many. That's too many years for a 1 year guy. I think.
Okay, that's fair. The
I
year thing is throwing me off.
especially when you don't. Especially when good production means their years are shortened. It's not set in stone.
Right.
Um, but oh boy, it's tempting though, because if you add again, arguably the best defensive tackle in the country to this Penn State defense, I'm not sure anyone scores on them. Like, what are you going to do against them? If you add Newton to this defense, how do you beat them?
The Newton thing, Newton running a 3-4 really messes me up for Illinois. Like Illinois' 3-4 defense is so different like
It
than
is.
anything else I think Penn State's really going to see. And a 3-4 nose tackle is, I think you would agree, Nick, one of the hardest things to do in college football is to be a
Yes.
3-4. Is it Vita Vea from the Bucks who does it like exceptionally well? Um
Yep.
there's like
Former Husky.
there's very few former, maybe future Big Ten member alumnus, the Washington
We'll
Huskies.
get there.
We'll get there. That's what makes it tough. Is that the Penn State's clearly going to keep with the 4-3. I think they value their edge rushers too much, and I think there's too much talent at that other defensive tackle spot. That how do you shift that? Like I'm sure it's a lot easier to go from a 3-4 to a 4-3, but the change in defense makes me a little bit concerned on that front.
That's a fair point. I hadn't considered that as much as I probably should have. That's a good argument. I think ultimately the answer to your question is no. I would not do the Bo and Katron and Zane proposal for him, but I also think that's probably a fair ask if you're Illinois in that case.
Okay.
You're giving up your best player for a potential offense and a replacement for him. So I think that's a fair ask. I don't think I'd do that from Penn State side.
Yeah, I think that makes it tough.
All right, Matt. Second proposal. What you got?
Okay, so receivers. I like Penn State's receivers a lot. I want to make sure I get in front of that. I think there's talent here.
Sure.
I need known commodities. Marvin Harrison's untouchable. I'm at peace with that. So let's flip our focus here to maybe another guy who could be a top 15 pick in the NFL draft. Emeka Egbuka.
This is great because my second proposal is also for Emeka Egbuka.
Okay, all right. Do you want to change yours? Should I change mine? Let's do this real time. What was your offer? And I'll tell you what mine would have been.
My offer was Curtis Jacobs and KJ Winston.
Oh, you're really leaning into the Ohio State defense's fraudulent claims here, Nick. Oh, wow. I don't think Ohio State does that.
I think you'd probably need another long-term piece.
I think you need a corner. Deal. I think you need a corner.
Maybe.
You can't give Kalen. I think Johnny Dixon, but that's only 1 year of eligibility. Curtis is only 1 year of eligibility. And KJ Winston, I think, is All-American potential in the long term. Oh, that's tough.
If Storm Duck hadn't so oddly left, then I think I'd be okay with giving up Dixon.
Are you crazy high on Cam Miller too as CB3? Like, because he was able to force Storm Duck out of here pretty early on. Like, I think that means Cam Miller's a better ball player than we're thinking he might be.
Yeah, I mean, I'm at the point where if Terry Smith recruits you as a cornerback to Penn State, I'm just going to go ahead and assume that you have a bright future ahead of you. Both because he's proven to be so good at identifying talent and they've proven to be so good at developing that talent. So we knew coming in, like he was somebody who, like the recruiting buzz about him was always like, yeah, maybe he's not ranked as high as some of these other guys, but like this is a true potential NFL dude. And I still don't know.
I say this to say, is Cam Miller part of your offer now?
I would be fine with giving up Cam. Yeah.
Cam Miller, KJ Winston, and Curtis Jacobs for Emeka Egbuka.
I would be okay with that.
I think that's the best case for everybody.
I think the value you get from adding Ibuka to this roster helps outweigh the negatives of not maybe just having your third and fourth string, everything down that and ends up getting downgraded as a result of losing Miller. I think it's worth having that downgrade because having a dude at receiver would be such a game changer. And like Cephas could be that guy. We don't
Mhm.
know yet, but having a surefire dude would be a big deal.
Yeah, it'd be huge. What if? All right, let's take. I want to take. I want to take KJ Winston out of there.
Okay.
Let's do Cam
As
Miller.
as you're talking, I'm going to try to think of one more proposal too, since we both had Ibuka.
Okay, I'm going to do Cam Miller. I'm going to do Curtis Jacobs. And I'm going to do. Oh. I'm going to do JB Nelson. Swing guy. Ohio State needs tackles. He can play guard as well. Could potentially start at guard for Penn State, maybe, depending on how that battle shakes out with Tengwall.
I could see
how about that?
I could.
Mature guy with, I think, at least 2 more years of eligibility left with the COVID year and the JUCO guy taking the red shirt last year.
I think that's fine. Yeah. I don't see any issues with that.
All right. I think we get there. All right.
Boy, I cannot think of what another. I can't even. It's really nice when Penn State has a team that seems to be so well built that you struggle to think of who would even be another really meaningful addition.
Yeah, first thought being punter for me kind of tells me everything I need to know about what I expect from this team,
I mean, yeah, because if it's not receiver, so I'm trying to think, are there any other Big Ten receivers that...
I like the Johnson guy from Michigan, Cornelius Johnson. I think he can play.
Yeah, he's good. Well, like elsewhere,
Caden Prather?
I can't. Oh, that's an interesting idea.
Prather at Maryland's not a bad one.
How about what's the kid's name? The linebacker. This is a really good podcast. The linebacker from Maryland that
Jayshawn Barham.
Jayshawn Barham. Yeah, that might be an interesting one.
I don't think you need a Mike.
I don't think they need anything.
No, I think they're. Anything.
Yeah, I think the chief needs. I think we hit like a stud defensive tackle would be great. A stud punter would be great. A stud receiver would be great. Everywhere else, they're kind of set. I guess you could make an argument that like a truly standout safety would maybe be helpful. Just to add, like we think they're probably.
I think one of the 4 there. I'm really high on Zakee Wheatley. I think Wheatley's going to flash in opportunities this year a lot more than he did last year.
Chances are one of those guys is going to be very good, and probably multiple of them. But I guess you could argue that maybe we're thinking too big. Maybe it makes more sense to do like a lower level deal just to add a little more safety experience into the room, just to pump it up a little bit, juice it up a little bit.
You're Eric Bruntlitz.
Yeah. Sometimes you just got to pick up like Jake Lamb at the trade deadline. Sometimes you just got to do it. You got to pick up Giovanni Soto. You got to pick up, God, who else? No, what other no names have been?
Again, this is maybe the most niche episode we've done in a long time. Do you like remembering some dudes? Do you like Immaculate Grid? And do you want to talk roster management? It's gonna be a great year.
Just an entire podcast of live solving an Immaculate Grid and talking about it, but no visual component attached to it whatsoever. Oh goodness! All right, we should do that again because that was fun. And maybe
I like that game.
We'll do another round of it after the deadline passes.
Yeah, perfect. That works for me. So Nick, I think the only thing we really have to hit on here is going to be maybe realignment. A lot's happened.
Yeah,
a lot's happened today. Colorado's back in the Big 12. I saw a report from Brett McMurphy of the Action Network that they won an even number of teams. In hindsight, it's wild. The Big Ten had 11 teams for as long as they did. That was so weird. Like 20
but
years
their
of
best,
11 teams.
But their best logo.
The best logo was the 11
had.
In there.
Yeah.
So there's clearly going to be more movement. the Big Ten, you have to imagine, is involved. Like, there's the strength and numbers play of it all.
Yeah.
Where do you think we're headed?
I think it is pretty clear that Washington, Oregon, and most likely Utah are going to end up in the Big Ten, whether that happens in the next couple of days or sometime in the next year. I think it's pretty
How about the
unavoidable
Arizona
at this
schools?
point. Arizona schools, I think, are both Big 12.
Mm.
Um, but it's when if we're talking about additions to the Big Ten, with the exception of Nebraska, again, please can we just kick Nebraska out? It's just so I hate Nebraska. I hate their fans. They're not even AAU accredited anymore. Since the Big Ten is so high and mighty about wanting to stick to that member accreditation standard, can we just get rid of them and get someone more interesting in there instead? But assuming that is still like the check box you got to mark in order to get even a chance at joining the Big Ten, that leaves Duke, UVA, Georgia Tech, Utah, Kansas, Washington, Oregon, UNC, Notre Dame, Stanford, Pitt, and Miami as the schools that I would rank as like, I mean, theoretically, it is possible.
I mean, let's
There's
be honest. The Big
also,
Ten's waiting for one domino to fall.
right,
Notre
but I
Dame.
don't think they can wait for that. I think they have to make some decisions on like I
Can
think
Notre
Washington and
but
Oregon. I
can
don't think
Notre
you can
Dame
wait.
afford to wait?
Probably.
You think?
I mean, so
I
for
get
Notre
the power of
Dame,
the brand. I think I'm maybe a little bit biased. I live in Chicago, very close to South Bend. Like, there's a lot of Notre Dame influence here. But like, is Notre Dame the brand it was 30 years ago? Maybe not nearly as powerful. And with the NBC deal, the NBC now in bed with the Big Ten, like, it feels like that's a
it certainly
domino that
makes
could,
sense.
before we hit the end of the decade, that feels very possible.
Yeah, I think the only reason that Notre Dame doesn't have to be the one to make the first move here is because I think the ACC is always going to be there for them. Like I think that fallback isn't
Will the
going
ACC
anywhere.
always be there?
It seems like the ACC is going to be okay. It seems like maybe at least in the very short term, like I mean, obviously the Pac-12 is going to be a flaming pile of wreckage within the next maybe even year, but it seems like the ACC is okay at least for now. If the Big Ten were to start poaching ACC schools, I think that like if UNC or UVA or Duke or Pitt or Miami, like if any of those came to the Big Ten, then I think it's a different story. Then I think that's that's the first leak. But I I feel like Notre Dame is going to wait for something else. And I think it's going to lead to the Big Ten initially adding Washington, Oregon, Utah, and leaving kind of that 20th spot open for now in hopes of getting Notre Dame. And then they'll reassess if they have to. That's my opinion on it.
Okay, all right.
And then
I don't think they're going to
just
make any
for
moves.
reference, real quick, other schools that are AAU accredited, but they're not coming to the Big Ten for one reason or another: Vanderbilt, Colorado, Arizona, Florida, Texas, Mizzou, USF, Arizona State. But they're not coming to the Big Ten for a variety of different reasons.
I don't think the Big Ten is going to make any moves until Notre Dame gives them what direction the wind is going to blow. That's been the white whale forever. I think you're gonna wait for her. You're gonna wait for Notre Dame. So
even if, I mean, do you risk losing Washington, Oregon, and I guess Utah if you want them while you're waiting for Notre
mean
Dame?
this in the nicest way possible.
Where are they going to go?
Where are they gonna go? Where are they gonna go? Like, the power brands in college football, like, are any of those three teams, maybe Oregon, in the top 10 most valued brands in the sport?
Nah. I mean,
So
certainly not Utah.
you already have maybe three of the top five in Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State, and if you get Notre Dame, you get four of maybe the top five. Like,
yeah.
That's your white whale. That's what it comes back to for me.
Yeah, that's fair. Can I ask a different, more fun question?
I'd love to.
who would be the 4 schools you would add?
If I had it my way,
Yeah.
can I kick people out?
Let's
No, yeah, let's
hold
keep it.
ourselves to
Okay,
only kicking out Nebraska. I am
okay,
very okay with kicking out Nebraska in the
okay,
theoretical situation, but
okay. I
we'll
can
hold
add four
ourselves to
schools.
that.
I'm adding. I'm adding Virginia Tech. I like
Okay.
Blacksburg a lot. I think Virginia Tech culturally fits with the Big Ten. I think it's a very blue collar, hard hat, coal country town. Same vein. Give me West Virginia. West Virginia should not be in
Hmm.
the Big 12. Bring them back here with us. Bring them back here in our slop. Um, Penn State needs a more local rival in the conference with more history than Rutgers or Maryland. Like, I just think that's what something that Penn State needs. Um, I would not.
I'm really into the idea of inviting West Virginia and not Pitt. Really into that.
Welcome to the part 2 of that point, Nick, and that would also just be very funny. Um, and then I would take. You can't split up UNC and Duke.
I mean, you could.
I think Georgia Tech would be interesting. I think if that
Hmm.
program ever found the right guy, with it, Atlanta booming the way it is, I think that could be a realistic, decent program. And then to wrap it up, give me Notre Dame. That's the way. Again, I, as a Penn State fan of a certain age, I do not have the same hatred for Notre Dame that a lot of our listeners and colleagues do. I just don't. I just don't have any experience of Notre Dame as like this rival to Penn State. So I think Notre Dame would just be very valuable for the conference the school I like is in, and that's what it comes back to for me.
I'm in the same boat as you as far I don't care about Notre Dame at all. I mean, I guess it's funny to see them lose, I guess. But I don't hate them or anything.
Their coach is cool now. I like Marcus Freeman a lot.
It's true. It's annoying, but yeah, I mean they're fun to hate just because they're a fun team to hate. I mean they're like the Cowboys, or they were at least for a long time, like the Cowboys of college football. So like that, I mean that's fun to root against. But I would love to. So I'm very cool with the idea of Washington and Oregon. One, selfishly, so I can see Penn State travel out here and I can go see a Penn State game at Husky Stadium, or yeah, I mean, I'd go down to Eugene to see that game. That'd be fun too. But if we're going to add UW and Oregon, I want them to bring Washington State and Oregon State with them.
Yep, they have to.
Again,
You have
very
to.
selfish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very selfish, but also like on a similar vein to UNC and Duke, I don't want to break up Washington and Washington State. Like it's a very fun rivalry. It's probably not one that people outside of the state really realize how fun it is. It's more like, oh, it's the Apple Cup. Yeah, I'll flip it on. But it's a very fun rivalry.
Mm-hmm.
And then Oregon State, Oregon is fun, especially because Oregon State is good now. Like Oregon State is a good football team.
They're going to win 10 games this fall.
And I'm very much for adding good football teams to the conference. And then, just from a logistical standpoint, I think it behooves the conference to add more West Coast teams.
Yep.
Now that you've added UCLA and USC, it just like
make it easy on those kids.
Yeah, I feel bad for the USC and UCLA kids who those first couple of years, every week they're going to be, or I guess every other week they're going to be flying across the country to play football, which I mean, fine, you can do it, but especially as the Athletic article about getting to Penn State, like I wouldn't be super hyped about having to fly to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and then drive, what is it?
An hour and a half.
Yeah, hour and a half to get to snowy State College in the middle of November. No part of that sounds appealing to me as insert California kid here who signed up to play football in Los Angeles. That doesn't sound like something I'd be interested in doing. So I think adding more West Coast teams, I think would be good just to balance that out.
I'm with you on that front, Nick. I am aligned. Nick, that's all I got. Anything else?
That's all I got.
For our lovely listeners, I will gladly read off the schedule here going forward in the month of August. Our plan is to take next week off, just as our own little bye week before we ramp up into the season. And then we will have 2 weeks of shows every day. We will be in your podcast feed on your YouTube screen from 8/7 until 8/18, Monday through Friday. We're doing the offensive positions that first week, defense that second week. So that'll be 2 straight weeks, Monday to Friday, of pods every day. The following week, we have our schedule preview. And I mean, Nick, my favorite episode we do every preseason are over-under prop bets that you won last year and are a coward and running away from it this year. I will
Listen,
bully you into
if you
joining me for
want
that
me to
podcast.
win
Yeah,
again,
come
I
back.
will happily join.
We'll do it again. And then after that, it's game week. So we are into the end game now. We are on our last legs of this offseason. So Nick, if you will join me again for the over-under pick, I have already done them. I have done them ahead of time this year. They have been vetted by friend of the pod, Stanley. So
Okay.
I am very excited about this year. I have a couple about this offense that I think are really gonna rack your brain. So I'm excited to do that in a couple weeks here.
Okay. If I remember correctly, I did 0 prep before last year, so it feels right that I should do 0 prep again this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Only healthy way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Nick, that is all I got. Welcome back. Thank you for joining me. I'm excited to do our podcast throughout this month of August and into the season. Hopefully we do some more live shows ahead of games this fall. I'm looking forward to that. Those are always fun. And thank you to the listeners for joining us today for this little podcast. Little, I say we're going on like 50 minutes if my timer's right. I said, well, hey, we'll do a quick 25, and here we are. But thank you all for listening. Be sure to leave a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice, whether that be Apple Podcasts, whichever one you go out there and you listen to us on. Be sure to leave us a 5-star review. We're on YouTube. Like and subscribe the channel. Leave a thumbs up on the video. Join the comment section. We always have some good lively discussion going on down there. Thank you to our partners at Home Field Apparel for sponsoring this podcast. Again, that's promo code ROAR for 15% off your first order at checkout. Nick, anything else?
I'm ready to get back into it. This is a great precursor for what's to come.
And what's to come is, of course, the Penn State Nittany Lion football season. For my co-host, Nick Polak, I'm Matt Flibovitz. Take care, everyone, and go State.
Go State.